and colleagues. Welcome back to another episode of Unfinished Business, your self-empowerment sanctuary where we learn, grow, and level up. On this week's episode, I wanted to share some valuable lessons that I've learned from over 10 years of working very closely with heads of departments, general managers, and CEO. And to begin, I'm going to briefly go through the type of leadership that I've worked with. I find it the easiest to divide my career into three. The first big chunk of my career right after college was gained in hospitality. So I experienced 6 beautiful years in that industry, becoming a head of department myself. And it was at hotels that I closely worked or mostly worked with general managers. And sometimes towards the end of that career, I responded or supported board member meetings as well. That means like the people that own the hotels. The second stage of my career is where I pivoted into the startup unicorn world in San Francisco. So I worked in startups for another 6 years of my life and only worked with founders and CEOs. And well, the last phase is where we are right now. A small business owner with big dreams and a mama bear. And not much has changed because, let's be real, anyone that is a parent knows that your kid is your CEO and is running your life. So let me take you through like the valuable lessons that I've learned, but also like gain knowledge from when I work with all these successful leaders. Let's go into all of these leaders or CEOs that I've learned some valuable lessons from. So the very first one is my very first manager that I had in hospitality. Let's call him BY. And what I loved about his leadership is that he always encouraged his staff by using sentences like, when you are a manager or when you lead a team in the future. And he doesn't like at all he never used it in an annoying way of being like on his high horse trying to teach you things. It was truly so genuine that I truly felt like he knew that I would be a leader one day. And he like kind of just talked to me, kind of like sharing knowledge as a future coworker. Mind you, like this was my first job ever. I had no clear vision of what I wanted to do in life. Then and there, I didn't know like exactly what path I was going to take. So it was just really, really like it just sparked something in me when he would use that phrase. Like always kind of like envisioning me in something else or like in the future of being a leader. And it sparked opportunity and possibility, which is super important. I took that with me and in my leadership. And I always, like after that, I always try to empower people around me and encourage my teams, like even like my team when I was a manager, I would always ask my team members, like, what do you want to do next? And how can I help? You know, if I have the power to help, like if I can just like make a phone call or lift a finger to help another professional advance in their career, I will do it. Like if it costs me absolutely nothing, like why not? You know, why not helping another professional? A couple of weeks ago, someone asked to talk about being an executive assistant, and I reached out immediately, and I even like forwarded her contact to like 2 really high-end recruiters that I knew and that I still have a relationship with. Okay, so I'm gonna jump to another couple of CEOs. So like I'm not going in no particular order at all. And this was in the startup environment. So when you work in startups, like especially when you work with the CEOs, like you'll get the true colors real quick. CEOs can be very particular. Like they have obviously a lot of stress, like they have investment money and particular personalities. Like you just have to kind of like adjust to their personality. But this is probably the best experience I've ever had. And it was because this CEO was probably the most human I've ever met. He had an immigrant story and it really spoke to my immigrant heart. And when it was actually, so I had 2 offers at this point, and I didn't know which one I wanted to go for. One was a little bit more stable And then this one with this human CEO was the one that I said yes to in the end. But it was really because his whole soul was like he basically, how do you say that? Like he wore his heart on his sleeve. Like I literally saw him cry once in front of a team because he was so passionate about the impact that the company that he created had on people, or it was like a specific example. And that was so beautiful, like this was, and this was also one of those companies that that I went through a layoff with. You may think of course, like that was the company that went through a layoff because they were too mushy. But no, the two layoffs that I have experienced is like actually the complete opposite. So like we have this CEO that was like the most human I've ever worked with. Like I even like remember I invested money in their company. Actually, I haven't seen my investment. I don't even know how it's going, but I invested money in that company even after the layoff. And I know that's super risky, but they do say that females make really good investors. But yeah, so that was one layoff, right? And then the other was the complete opposite, like super arrogant, like absolutely no compassion for workers. And that just goes back to like, there are assholes out there, like billionaire assholes and billionaire good-hearted people out there. There is success in both ways of doing business. Like you can be an asshole or you can be a human. I rather go the human way, right? Like that's like, you don't have to, and it makes me sad like sometimes that, even women in a business world, they have to put on this like armor of like being harsh because you have to gain the respect in the business world where like it's a man's dominated field. And that makes me sad. I also think that you have to be human, and I'm not going to be negative and toxic just because everyone else is. That is like the biggest lesson I just from that experience, I'm like, I want to be more like him. I want to be more human. I want to really be in contact with my heart and soul when I do business. Like, I don't care. Like, money isn't everything. The next lesson is, I would say, like, a lot of these, like, the biggest lesson that I've learned is from female CEOs. And I don't know, like, I'm sure it is because I'm biased because I'm a female myself. And I also don't know if it's coincidentally like my female bosses that I've had have just been the best bosses ever. So I'm going to say like female bosses are the best, like in my experience. In the startup world, I worked with a couple of female CEOs and founders, and I loved how they handled COVID and social injustices. I basically started with them like when everything was great, like before, like 2 years before COVID probably. And then we went through COVID. And so, I'm sure everyone that lived or worked through COVID knows that a lot of companies closed down. And I'm not only talking about like restaurants, I'm talking about like startups as well. And, at this point, I know, and like even from back then to now, I know when shit is hitting the fan, right? Because as an EA, you do get access to a lot of confidential information. You see numbers, you see a lot of confidential information in general. And so you kind of see like, oh, the numbers are down, like things are going to happen, like moves are going to happen. And what I loved about those bosses was that they really stood strong in front of their investors and advocated for no layoffs. Let's cut costs anywhere else, but we're not going to lay off people. And I know like the part of their vision and mission of the brand was to lift women up. So obviously like they wanted to stay strong to their vision and mission, like to like not, because most of us were women. So they were so strong. And I remember writing a letter to them, like just how grateful. And I was pregnant right at the end of that or the beginning. I can't remember, but, and I was so scared. And then when they came out, like they told the whole company, like, we are not going to lay off anyone. And that was like such a relief. And I was just like, wow. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in investments, but as investors, yeah, like you have to know that like markets go up and down. COVID, for example, like maybe made a little dent on investment in general, but it goes up and down. So they were looking at like these bosses were obviously looking at years ahead. They're like, okay, well, this is going to be a little dent. Like we're going to just lose money, but it's going to be fine. Like this is just a bump. And I just truly respected that decision. And I'm going to, bring that with me as well. Again, like not everything is money. Like everything, like you just have to use your heart, your soul. And I just like will forever love that move. And the same thing happened through like BLM happened right after. And, I know that BLM is not a new movement, but it was new for me then because in my lifetime in the US, that was the first time that I experienced BLM. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Black Lives Matters. And, I grew up in Sweden. So and not to say that there's for sure racism in Sweden. I just didn't experience it at a level that racism is experienced here in this country. I was so depressed. And this company too, like really handled social injustices very well. They understood like, oh, okay, this is happening, like checking in on the team. And since I was the EA, like they used me obviously as also kind of like being that middle person of like, can you check on the team and just report back and what do we need? And I would like, oh, okay, well, everyone is basically depressed. So we had speakers join and we like really opened the conversation. And it was just honestly like, haven't seen companies do that. And I know that a lot of startups are really great at that, like thinking outside the box and just doing things a little differently than from the traditional like corporate world. But that was just really cool. And like they, even like after COVID, donated a lot of money to, Black communities, Asian communities for all these like social injustices. So that is something that also I'm going to bring with me. Like, I think that it's very important to support POCs and just underrepresented people in general. All right. So the next one is also a female. She's been amazing. Like she is my mentor today. It's not officially my mentor, but like she's been there through that whole like end of my hospitality career as a manager, a head of department, but also today. Like she is basically one of my clients too, and we're helping each other. She has her business, I have mine, and it's just been amazing. She taught me a lot of lessons. So in kind of like in line with or sensing the overall sentiment, I guess, of your team is very important. And I think that that's where women are greater. Like we just have that empathy and just like emotional touch to understand what's happening and reading the room from an emotional standpoint. And, I remember Trump got elected and she just brought in the team and she was like, like if you guys are unhappy and sad, you can go home. And she just sent us home and she was like, if you don't want to come in tomorrow, that's fine. Like, I understand. Like, I think that was such a big and bold move. The other thing that I learned was really cool because we worked in marketing and sometimes we knew that, some partnerships were not going to happen because we didn't have the budget. But she always said that because in my mind, I'm like, why would I even schedule a meeting with these people if we're not going to work with them? And she would always say, well, because you're going to learn from them and you're going to learn as much as you can from them. Honestly, it was so true. So I remember wanting to work with this like social media company. I really love their content and I booked a meeting with them. I knew that I was not going to be able to work with them. We didn't have the budget, but I learned so much. Like in the meeting, they had like a beautiful deck and they talked a little bit about the process. Of course, they're not going to give out like all their secrets, right? But in like a big overview, at least, like you get an overview of their work and how they work. And I already learned so much and I applied so much of that to our social media strategy. I just thought that was such a valuable lesson. The other thing that I learned from her was to have a minority boardroom in your brain when you're taking decisions. I love that. Like, obviously in marketing, it just made sense. Whenever I had like any kind of like event or I had to do a promotion and like advertising or something that had like visual aid, she said, okay, I want you to have every single minority in your head looking at that ad. And I was like, oh my God, like so genius. Because you obviously have a target audience. You don't want to limit that audience, right? So like, I mean, even if it's like a little word or like a little color or like whatever, like you can make such difference by making everything inclusive by just like adjusting small things. And so I thought that was just genius. She always said, know your audience. Whenever you have a public speaking event, go out and talk to your audience. Like go out and mingle first and just understand what kind of audience is there right now. She was very, very big on gender equality and also just represent the minorities because, I mean, she is a Black woman and I'm a Latina, and even the team that she put together back then when I started that position, like we are all friends today. And I'm only saying that because she knew, like she put this team together, like knowing, like when she hired me, she's like, okay, I can see you fit in the team. Like it was very important to her that every single person in that team would fit into the team. And it was the most diverse, like we had a Persian queen, we had an Asian, we had, Latina me, Jewish, white, Caribbean, Dominican, like we had it all. It was like honestly the best team ever. And so she was really into that, but also just like giving people the opportunity. And I would say this, she opened that door for me because I had been in hospitality for so long, and it was like a vicious circle because like when you apply for a manager, they're like, oh, what's your experience? I'm like, well, like if I can't become a manager, how am I going to get the experience to become a manager? So it was so frustrating. And I remember she basically just said, like, I believed in you. Like you didn't have the experience, you didn't have the manager experience, but I believed in you. I liked your personality. I liked your vibe, your energy. Like I knew that you had the fire in you, and that's why I gave you that position. I will forever be grateful for that. The most valuable lessons have been from the female CEOs or leaders in my professional career. And I really hope that I can bring all that knowledge into my leadership and who I am. And I was going to talk about like the negative, like the one negative company with adult tantrums and do not support females and arrogant. But you know what? I'm not even going to give that space into this podcast because I'm all positivity and great vibes. I have too many good bosses and too many good experiences in my career that is what I'm going to bring with me. And yes, that is all I have for today. I hope that this made you reflect a little bit about your bosses, like good experiences, and hopefully you can really highlight the good memories and the good lessons that you got in your career or in your life, and just stick to those and see like what do you want to bring in your backpack of life? What legacy do you want to make with those lessons? So that is all I have for today. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I will chat to you next week. Toodles!